What's up, Raider Nation? Today we're diving into all the prospects the Las Vegas Raiders could realistically select with the 6th overall pick in the upcoming NFL Draft. We're covering every position: quarterbacks, wide receivers, offensive and defensive linemen, and more. These are players who could genuinely be on the board when the Raiders are on the clock. Let's set the scene. There are a few prospects who are likely out of reach. Guys like quarterback CamWard, two-way star Travis Hunter, and linebacker Abdul Carter are probably not going to fall to pick 6. But beyond those three, there's a real shot the rest of the top talent could be available. We'll go through each position group in order, starting with quarterbacks, then moving on to running backs, receivers, the trenches on both sides of the ball, and finally, cornerbacks. So let's kick things off with one of the biggest names being discussed, quarterback ShedeurSanders. Early in the scouting process, back in September through November, Shedeur looked like a top-tier talent. He flashed NFL arm strength, poise, and leadership. But as more tape came out, some concerns started to show up. One of the biggest is how he processes the field. At times, he looks a step behind in reading defenses, and that's a red flag at the pro level. Some analysts were calling him the top quarterback in the class early on. That may have been a stretch. Right now, it's widely accepted that CamWard holds that title, with Shedeur landing as the second-best QB in this draft cycle. Even so, there are questions about whether he's worth a top 6 pick. If the Raiders coaching staff, especially someone like Chip Kelly, believes they can develop him, then there's a case to be made. But Shedeur looks like the kind of quarterback who would need to sit and learn before taking the reins. He's not quite as slow to process as other young quarterbacks have been, like a rookie-year Justin Fields or early-career Lamar Jackson, but he's not there yet. The upside is there if you build the right system around him. That said, with the Raiders recently investing in veteran quarterback Geno Smith, it might make more sense to pass on a quarterback at pick 6, especially if the team expects to be picking later in the draft next year due to a stronger season. As of now, ShedeurSanders is really the only quarterback who makes some sense at that spot. Other names have been thrown around, JacksonDart, Jalen Milroe, and Tyler Show among them, but it's hard to see those players cracking the top 15. CamWard is likely a top pick, and Shedeur could sneak into the first round, but a third quarterback going early would be surprising. Now let's talk about running backs. And one name has stood out more than any other among Raiders fans, Ashton Jeanty. There's a lot of excitement around Jeanty. Some are even calling him a generational talent. But let's take a step back. What does that label really mean? To put it into perspective, think about Bijan Robinson. When he came out of Texas, scouts praised his rare ability to stop and start with explosive speed. For example, if a play was designed to go outside and the edge was sealed off, Robinson had the ability to slam on the brakes, cut back, and get to full speed instantly in the opposite direction. That kind of suddenness is extremely rare, something 99% of backs just don't have. And then there's his vision. Robinson had elite field awareness, able to read developing blocks and find lanes before they even opened. That's what helped him dominate at the college level and what made him a top pick in the NFL. Jeanty shows flashes of those same traits, but it's important not to throw the generational label around too casually. He's a high-potential player for sure, and there's a lot to like about his game. But he'll need to show those special traits consistently to be in the same conversation as someone like Bijan. When it comes to elite running backs, vision is important, but it's not the defining trait. What really separates the best from the rest is movement. That rare ability to stop on a dime, change direction, and explode again without losing momentum. That's what makes a running back special. Saquon Barkley was that kind of athlete when he came out of Penn State. People said he just moved differently. That unique blend of balance, burst, and body control helped make him a top 5 pick in his draft class. Same goes for Bijan Robinson. He had that rare stop-start quickness that only a handful of backs in the NFL possess. Those traits are what got him selected in the top 10. Ashton Jeanty is the next running back being talked about in that category. There's no doubt, Jeanty has star potential. He's dynamic, elusive, and has that natural balance that jumps off the screen. But here's the reality. No matter how talented a back is, success at the NFL level heavily depends on the offensive line in front of him. Look at Saquon Barkley. Incredible athlete, top-tier talent, but when the Giants' offensive line struggled, so did his production. On the other hand, Bijan Robinson played behind one of the best lines in football with the Falcons, and even then, the team didn't win many games. That's not a knock on Bijan, It's just the truth about the modern NFL. Running backs don't carry teams anymore, not without help in the trenches. If the Raiders were to draft Ashton Jeanty at number 6 overall, it wouldn't be a bad pick, but it wouldn't be my first choice either. There are at least 8 other players I'd prioritize at that spot. And here's why. Let's say Jeanty gets 300 carries and averages 4.8 yards per run. Then you've got someone like Tre'Veyon Henderson, who goes in the second round and averages 4.5. That's not a massive difference in output, but it's a huge gap in draft value. 6th overall versus 38th. It's not that Jeanty isn't worth a high pick, it's that the position itself doesn't hold the same value it once did. Bijan Robinson didn't carry the Falcons to the playoffs. Barkley didn't turn the Giants into contenders. And honestly, the Raiders' offensive line is closer to what the Giants had than what the Eagles have. And that's worth thinking about. Philadelphia is the gold standard in offensive line play. Their unit is dominant year after year. And a big reason is offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland, arguably the best in NFL history. He's turned late-round picks and developmental players into Pro Bowlers. Jordan Mailata was considered a project, and now he's one of the top left tackles in the game. Landon Dickerson was a second-rounder who became an all-pro guard. Cam Jurgens replaced Jason Kelce and kept the line rolling. Even Mekhi Becton, written off by many, had a resurgence and landed a massive contract, thanks to development in that Eagles system. Point is, unless you've got a top-tier offensive line and elite coaching, it's hard for any running back to truly take over games. That's why building in the trenches has to be a priority. If the Raiders draft Jeanty and ignore the offensive line, there's a real risk his impact gets minimized. Guys like DJ Glaze, Alex Kappa, and Dylan Parham need to take major steps forward for this offense to truly click. Otherwise, it won't matter how talented the backfield is. Without protection, the whole thing stalls. Now, with that said, Jeanty is still likely the only running back the Raiders would even consider at pick 6. Some fans have mentioned Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. He's a solid prospect and could sneak into the top 10 if Jeanty goes earlier than expected. But at pick 6, that still feels like a long shot. When we get into second-round possibilities, that's where things open up. There are probably 6 or 7 running backs who could be realistic targets in that range, and we'll break them down in a separate video. For now, let's pivot to the wide receiver group. This is a position of real need for the Raiders, and there are several wideouts who make sense with the 6th overall pick. It's a deep, talented class, and the Raiders will have options. Now, we still don't know exactly how new GM JohnSpytek will approach the draft. Some fans are pointing to his time with the Buccaneers, trying to predict his style. But let's be clear, Spytek wasn't calling the final shots in Tampa Bay. He served as assistant general manager, not the decision maker. While he may have had input, he didn't have the final say on draft picks. So, as we assess these wide receiver options, keep in mind, we're stepping into unknown territory with this new front office. But there's no doubt wide receiver will be in play when the Raiders are on the clock. Here's the thing. JohnSpytek has never been the guy who had to make the pick, until now. In Tampa Bay, if a draft pick didn't work out, it wasn't on him. But in Vegas, that pressure's real. Every decision he makes now could shape the Raiders' future, for better or worse. So when it comes to draft strategy, we don't know yet if Spytek will lean strictly on best player available, needs-based, or a blend of both. Truth is, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle, and that's smart. Let's say Travis Hunter's off the board. And quick note, for some reason, the NFL mock draft database still lists him as a cornerback. That's not what he's going to play in the NFL. Travis Hunter is a wide receiver, period. Cornerback is a system position, and unless you're an elite defensive mind, you're not building around one. Most fans couldn't even name 7 starting corners outside their team. But Travis Hunter, he's a playmaker. He's got Jamar Chase-like potential if he's there at number 6, you run the card up. But if he's gone and you're eyeing wide receivers, it depends on whether you're going BPA or filling needs. Even if a guy like tight end Tyler Warren is ranked highest on your board, you don't take him because you already drafted Brock Bowers. Needs matter. And wide receiver? That's a real need for the Raiders. Teteroa McMillan is one of the names that should be in that conversation. A lot of people have him as WR2. I've got him as my WR3. But he's still someone I'd consider at pick 6. Right now, the Raiders' top 2 offensive weapons are Brock Bowers and Jakobi Meyers. And as good as Meyers is, he's not the kind of wideout who's taking a screen pass 50 yards to the house. Bowers can. So can a guy like Travis Hunter. Jacoby's a possession receiver, great at contested catches, clutch on third downs, and tough as nails. But he's not a home run hitter. The Raiders need explosive playmakers, and McMillan fits that mold. He's 6 feet 3.5 inches with a huge catch radius. He's not the guy who's going to break tackles and sprint 70 yards, but he's going to win on slants, posts, and crossers. He's going to win at the catch point. You throw it within 5 yards of him, he'll go get it. He might not ever be a 1,600-yard receiver, but he'll catch 80 to 90 passes on 120 targets, and he'll move the chains. He's a red zone weapon, a reliable X-receiver, and the perfect complement to Bowers and Myers. He won't blow past corners, but he'll bully them. And that's exactly what this offense needs. Travis Hunter could play X too. Though he's smaller, he's twitchy and explosive. He fits in a different way, but he fits. Another name to keep an eye on? Kyle Williams. He's my WR2 in this class. You probably won't find him projected in the top 10 on mock draft sites, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't be. A lot of those databases just copy each other. And if someone like Mel Kiper doesn't put a guy up high, most others won't either. But Kyle Williams has tape, and on that tape, he moves. He creates separation. He's slippery after the catch. He'll take a screen pass 60 yards before the defense knows what happened. If the Raiders love him, I'd be totally fine with them taking him at number 6. Now, there are some concerns. He played at Washington State, so he didn't always face top-tier competition. That matters. When guys come out of LSU or Ohio State and dominate, you know they did it against the best. That makes the transition to the NFL smoother. That's why you take those guys in the top 10 without hesitation. With someone like Williams, there's more projection involved, but talent-wise, he's right there with anyone. Kyle Williams might not be a name you take in the top 5 on most mock drafts, but for the Raiders at number Ara, he's absolutely in play. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. Now, beyond Kyle, there are 3 other wide receivers I'd consider at pick 6, Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, and Luther Burden. And let's be real about something. Rankings don't matter. They change fan perception, sure. You might look at a mock draft and see a player ranked 35th overall and wonder why a team would take him at number 35, 6. But most of those rankings are crowdsourced or media-driven. They're not built by NFL front offices. A guy like Luther Burden might be WR4 on a public board, but a top 10 player in an actual NFL war room. Scouts might see him as a difference maker, and honestly, I do too. Here's how I've got my personal wide receiver rankings. Travis Hunter, WR1, Kyle Williams, WR2, Tetairoa McMillan, WR3, Luther Burden, WR4. And honestly, Burden and McMillan are very close. Then after that, Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka are in that next tier. Same with Jaden Higgins, though I probably wouldn't take Higgins in the first round. Still, there's a world where the Raiders go with Burden, Golden, or Egbuka at pick 6, even if it feels like a reach to fans. If Hunter and McMillan are already off the board and the Raiders want a receiver, never say never. Now let's flip over to offensive tackles. This class is messy. My opinions here have changed a lot. There's no clear consensus OT1, but most people are starting to agree. Armin Malk is the best offensive tackle in this class. I've been high on him since January, and when the measurements came in, 6 feet 3.5 inches, 34-inch arms, it locked it in for me. And remember, arm length matters more than height when you're projecting tackles. Malk is a real option at pick 6, and he's my OT1. After Malk, that's where things get murky. I honestly don't even have a strong OT2 right now. If you want my thoughts on Mbaye, I actually went deeper on him in a separate mock draft video I posted yesterday. You can check that out for more. But let's talk about a few others. Will Campbell, he's undraftable at number 6 for me. And I don't mean he's a bad player. I just think he's being projected way too high. He reminds me of Peter Skoronski from Northwestern. When Skoronski came out, the tape was clean. He was technically excellent, but we knew from the jump, this guy's probably not going to stick at tackle in the NFL. He's a guard, and Skoronski is a good guard now. But if you're drafting a guard in the top 10, that's bad value. I feel the same way about Campbell. He'll be a solid NFL guard, but I wouldn't use a top 15 pick on him. You can find guys like Trey Smith in the 5th round, Jackson Powers-Johnson in the 2nd. Ben Powers was a 3rd or 4th rounder. Good interior linemen are out there later in the draft. You don't need to burn a premium pick on one, especially not top 6. If the Raiders take Will Campbell, I'll be honest, I'd be frustrated. Now, a few other tackle prospects are worth watching. Kelvin Banks, some project him as a tackle, others as a guard. I lean guard. I'm not sure I'd call him a first-round tackle. Josh Simmons, intriguing prospect. Tore his ACL at Ohio State last year, but he was getting OT one buzz early in the process. He's raw, but if he develops right, he could be a really good pro. Josh Connerly Jr., still a bit of a project, but very athletic. Another guy with upside depending on his development path. Bottom line, this offensive tackle class is still wide open. If the Raiders want to go that direction at pick 6, Armand Mock is the guy. The rest, lot more projection involved. Armand Mock is absolutely a top 10 pick, and honestly, his tape backs that up completely. He's a blue-chip player, a day-one starting offensive tackle. No questions. If you've watched enough of his tape, you just see it. The guy is rock solid. Everyone else in this offensive tackle class? There's always something missing. Short arms, slower feet, developmental needs. I don't know if there's another tackle I'd trust to start on day one outside of Mock and maybe Mbaye. So don't be surprised if a team like the Patriots jumps on Mbaye early. Now when it comes to Kelvin Banks, I'd only take him if I'm drafting him as a guard. If someone wants him as a tackle, I'd be looking at him in the second round, not the first. Josh Connerly Jr. is the only other guy I'd consider in the first round. I probably wouldn't take him at number 6, but he's got serious upside. If he hits his ceiling, he'll be a really solid player. But again, you're betting on development. There are other tackles with potential. Arante Ursary has flashes, but he's a little slow. And if you're not an elite mover at tackle, you're going to struggle. One week you're up against Micah Parsons, explosive and twitchy. The next week it's Trayvon Walker or Tyree Wilson, guys who'll bull rush you 15 yards into the backfield. You need quick feet and strength. That's where guys like Wyatt Milliam, Kelvin Banks, and Josh Connerly come into question. They're on the smaller side. Can they anchor against power? That's something we'll need to watch as they develop. A few names I do believe in. Ozzie Trapillo. He's got the traits. I believe he can start in the NFL at tackle. Anthony Belton. Another one I think has starter potential. He's big, about 6 feet 5.5 inches, 34.5-inch arms. Long enough to stay at tackle. Physical, strong. Still developing, but the upside is real. If Mock is off the board, let's say he goes at number 4 and the Raiders want to tackle, don't be shocked if Belton is in play at number 6. Now, I think teams might project him more as a guard, but if you're projecting traits and development, he could sneak into the top 15. Might be a little rich at 6, but again, wouldn't shock me. All right, let's move on to the defensive tackles. Mason Graham, I'm just not high on him. I'll be honest. I've been evaluating defensive linemen seriously for 4 or 5 years now. I watched Jalen Carter, and right away I knew. This guy's different. He was the best DT prospect I've seen in years. I watched Christian Barmore a couple years before that. Devontae Wyatt, too. Both legit. But when I saw Carter's tape, it jumped off the screen. Explosive, polished, disruptive. Now Mason Graham? He's not that. I don't think he's close. To me, Graham is closer to Tyree Wilson than Jalen Carter, and not in a good way. He's strong, elite run defender, but he lacks real pass rush upside. And yeah, I've seen the clips on Twitter. There's one where he swims over the USC center. Great highlight. But highlights aren't tape. 1 or 2 good plays don't mean a guy's dominating every snap. When you watch full games, Graham's limitations show up. He doesn't have elite movement. His hands aren't super refined. And for a top 10 pick at defensive tackle, I need more than just a powerful run stuffer. That said, I wouldn't be furious if the Raiders took him. He's still useful. I just don't think he'll ever reach a Jalen Carter level, or even Khalidja Kancey level when Kancey came out. I don't see Mason Graham as a top 10 defensive tackle. His tape just isn't on the same level as guys like Christian Barmore coming out of Alabama. Barmore's tape was better, and that says a lot. Now, would I personally take Graham? Number. But I'd understand it if the Raiders did, strictly for his run defense. That part of his game is legit. Would the Raiders take any other DT at number? Ahu? Probably not. Walter Nolan is the only other one I could see them considering that high. And honestly, I think Nolan might end up going before Graham. Walter Nolan has something special. Movement. He's twitchy. He flashes the same type of suddenness we saw in Jalen Carter, even if his pass rush technique isn't at that level yet. But he's got the first key component, that first step. When Jalen Carter rushed the passer, 2 things stood out. The movement out of his stance, fake left, come back right, fake right, spin left, and then the handwork. When you pair a fake with a precise chop or swipe, that's what creates pressure. Walter Nolan has that first part down. The twitch, the fake, the explosion. If he develops the hand technique, he could be really good. And if a team bets on that upside and takes him before Graham, I wouldn't be surprised at all. We saw Byron Murphy the second go 15th to Seattle last year, so seeing Walter Nolan go somewhere between 10 to 20 wouldn't shock me. As for other defensive tackles, not many names I'd consider at 6. Kenneth Grant? I like him, but not that early. Derek Harmon, Darius Alexander, solid but second-round guys to me. Let's talk about edge real quick. Abdul Carter, he won't be there at 6. Jalen Walker, he's interesting, but what is he? A linebacker, an edge rusher? He played a lot of backer at Georgia. He's quick, he's fast, but I just don't see it with him as a true edge. Feels like he's being overrated a little bit. Now, would I be shocked if the Raiders took a linebacker at 6? Not really. Guys like JohnSpytek, who's now in Vegas, have drafted backers high before, but I still wouldn't do it. If Abdul Carter's not there, I don't think I'd take any edge at 6. 2 names that could make sense on tape. Mike Green, James Pierce Jr. Both are freak athletes. Green is physical, strong, explosive. Pierce has elite twitch and bend. On tape, both make a lot of sense. But the red flags are real. Green reportedly has some serious off-field concerns, alleged assault cases. Pierce apparently has major anger issues, like not just fired up once a week, more like serious temperament concerns. So if those guys were clean from a character standpoint, yeah, they'd be legit 6th overall candidates. But because of those concerns, I think both fall into that 15 to 32 range. Now let's wrap it with corners. 2 names I think the Raiders could take at 6. Will Johnson, Jaron, Jet Barron. Both guys are solid, but corner is a system position. It depends on fit. Is Will Johnson the next Derek Stingley Jr.? Is Barron the next Jalen Ramsey? I don't know. Corners aren't a position I usually dive deep on, but I did watch a little Barron tape and also checked out Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. He's another guy with strong tape. If I'm being honest, I'd wait until round 2 to grab a corner. There's depth this year. Javon Bullard Jr. If he hadn't gotten hurt last year, he might have been a top 10 pick. Benjamin Morrison was considered a top 15 guy before the season and could fall. So yeah, if you believe in Will Johnson or Barron, take them. But personally, I'd wait. And lastly, you guys know how I feel about Travis Hunter. He might be my number 1 player on the board this year. As a wide receiver, he's a difference maker, no doubt. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Bit of a different kind of video, more of a brain dump of my thoughts leading up to the draft. Use this as a reference when the real picks start coming in. Appreciate you all for watching. You know, I don't follow the herd. I value players based on what I see on tape, not based on media hype. So if someone says Mason Graham is an elite prospect, one of the best DTs in the last 10 years, I'll still go back, watch the film, and judge for myself. Hope y'all enjoyed this. If you're a Lakers fan, enjoy the game tonight. It's going to be a wild series. Drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.